The wind carried grit through the empty street, sharp as glass, whistling between weather-beaten buildings that looked half dead themselves. A crooked sign creaked above the saloon door, Dry Creek Tavern, where a handful of men leaned on the porch rail, boots up, faces mean with whiskey and boredom. Through that frozen dust storm came a woman, small, gaunt, her shawl drawn tight around her shoulders. In her arms, wrapped in a gray blanket, was a box, no bigger than a loaf of bread. She walked with the stiffness of someone who hadn't slept in days. The men paused, their voices slurred with cruelty. Hell, one said, spitting into the mud. Ain't that the Price widow? Thought she'd died with the rest of 'em. Another snorted. Guess she's too mean for the grave. The woman didn't look up. Her boots sank into the wet ground, her breath visible in the cold air. The church bell tolled once, a dull, heavy sound. Couldn't even feed the poor thing. A third man said, maybe God don't take charity from sinners. The others laughed. Loud, harsh laughter that cut through the quiet like a whip. Mary Ellen Price stopped. Slowly, she turned to face them. The wind blew her hair across her eyes, black and tangled. Her voice was low but steady. You laugh at a woman's sorrow? The men went still, half in mock surprise. One of them, bigger than the rest, red-faced from drink, stood. Ain't our fault your man couldn't keep you, or the babe alive. Her fingers tightened on the box. He kept us alive longer than your kind ever would have. That only made them grin wider. One slapped his knee. Ain't she fiery? Maybe you should have saved your breath for your baby, lady. They roared again. She didn't cry, didn't shout. She just turned away, her voice flat and hollow. They laughed when my baby died, she whispered, as though repeating the words might carve them into stone. And I laughed back, because I was done crying. The men fell silent. Something about the way she said it, cold, final, made even the drunkest of them look away. She kept walking past the church, past the general store where the windows were shuttered against her. At the edge of town, the snow began to fall again, slow, white, and merciless. By the time she reached the churchyard gate, night was settling like ash. The priest stood outside, bundled in a heavy coat. His eyes flicked the box in her arms and then away again. I can't, he said before she even spoke. Burials require payment, Mrs. Price. I have nothing, she said softly. Then take him to the hills. He turned, unwilling to meet her gaze. The Lord watches over all souls, rich or poor. She wanted to scream, but her voice had nothing left in it. So she simply nodded and walked away, her steps uneven in the deepening snow. The graveyard gate creaked behind her as though mocking her retreat. Somewhere down the street, a boy's voice rang out, "Devil woman!" A small rock hit her shoulder. Another boy laughed. She didn't turn. The air smelled of smoke and cold iron. The baby's box grew heavier with every step, though the child inside weighed almost nothing at all. She reached the edge of the wilderness by midnight. The town lights flickered behind her, faint and distant, like dying candles. She followed the narrow trail along the creek, the sound of running water muffled beneath a crust of ice. Her breath came in ragged clouds. Her feet bled through torn boots. At last, she saw it, a broken-down shack, half swallowed by frost. The roof sagged. The chimney leaned like a drunk. Still, it was shelter. She stumbled inside and dropped the box on a rotted table. Wind moaned through the gaps in the walls. She built a fire from old planks and watched it catch, weakly at first, then steady. The flames painted the room in orange light, casting shadows on cracked walls and a rusted stove. She set the box on the floor beside her. Her hands trembled as she lifted the lid. The baby was wrapped in a faded cloth, his face peaceful, untouched by the ugliness of the world that had taken him. She touched his tiny fingers, cold as stone. "You'll have your rest soon, sweetheart," she whispered. Outside, coyotes howled across the valley, their cries long and lonely. The sound made her shiver. She leaned back against the wall, exhaustion crushing her. Her eyelids grew heavy. The fire dimmed. Somewhere between waking and sleep, she thought she heard footsteps crunching outside. Then the door creaked open. Her eyes snapped wide. A shadow filled the frame. A tall man, broad-shouldered, his coat dripping with melted snow. She grabbed the nearest thing, a kitchen knife dull from rust, and raised it. "Don't come closer." The man froze. His voice came low, calm, steady as a winter river. "Easy. I ain't here to hurt you." His face was half hidden beneath a hat brim, his beard flecked with frost. He set down a worn satchel and slowly removed his gun belt, laying it on the floor where she could see it. "I saw the fire," he said. "Didn't think anyone be out here this late." Her eyes flicked to the coffin on the floor. His followed and stopped. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he knelt, head bowed slightly, as though in silent prayer. "Who did this to you?" he asked finally. She looked at him, her eyes hollow. "Everyone." The fire crackled between them, painting both faces in flickering amber light. The man, Jonas Creed, nodded once, slow. He took off his coat and laid it over her shoulders. "You're freezing," he murmured. "I don't need your pity," she said, though her voice broke halfway through. Wasn't offering pity. He glanced at the box. Just respect. For the first time, her hand loosened around the knife. Outside, thunder rolled far off over the hills. The storm was coming hard. "Best close that door," he said quietly. "Night don't forgive the living any more than it does the dead." They sat in silence for what felt like hours, the only sound the pop of wetwood burning. Jonas fixed the kettle on the flames, the smell of coffee slowly filling the shack. Mary stared at the fire, the warmth creeping into her fingers like a memory. "Why were you out here?" she asked at last. He didn't answer right away. "Looking for something," he said finally. "Maybe redemption. Maybe a place to disappear." She gave a bitter smile. "There's no disappearing out here. Just slower ways to die." He didn't argue. The storm hit just before dawn. Howling wind, sleet hammering the roof like nails. The fire sputtered. Jonas rose, wedged a plank against the broken window. "You travel alone?" he asked over the noise. She nodded. "Ain't got anyone left." His eyes softened. "You got courage. That's something." "I got nothing," she said. "Not even a grave for him." He looked toward the box again, jaw tightening. "You'll have one come morning. I'll help you." Her throat caught. "Why?" "Because someone should have done already." She studied him then. The weathered skin, the scar cutting through his eyebrow, the quiet in his movements. Not the restlessness of a drifter or the cruelty of a bounty man. Something heavier. "You don't strike me as a preacher," she said. He almost smiled. "I ain't." The storm went on, the wind wailing like lost souls outside. Inside it was warm, fragile, fleeting warmth, but real. Mary leaned her head against the wall, too tired to fight the sleep that pressed in. When she opened her eyes again, the fire had burned low. The stranger was still awake, sitting near the door with his rifle across his knees, watching the shadows like he expected company. She spoke softly. "You can go. You don't owe me nothing." His gaze didn't move from the window. "No one ever does," he said. "That's the trouble." The words lingered between them, thick with meaning she couldn't quite grasp. At some point, exhaustion claimed her again. When morning came, she woke to find him outside. He was standing by the creek, the world turned silver by dawnlight. He'd dug a small grave beside a tree where the snow had melted enough to break ground. The box rested beside it. Mary stepped out, the cold biting her skin. Jonas met her eyes. "You ready?" She nodded, unable to speak. Together, they buried the child. She placed a single dried flower on the mound, her fingers trembling. Jonas removed his hat and bowed his head. His voice, when it came, was rough but sincere. "May the Lord take him where this land could not." Mary's tears fell silently, darkening the snow. When it was done, she stayed kneeling long after he'd stepped back. Her heart felt like it had stopped beating somewhere along the way. But there was a strange peace, too, a quiet she hadn't known since Before the Hunger, before the laughter. Jonas came beside her and spoke in that same low voice. "You don't have to bury him alone." She turned to him, eyes red-rimmed, voice a whisper. "Why are you helping me?" He looked out toward the horizon, where the sky bled gray over the ridges. Because I seen what happens when no one helps. It don't sit right with me. The wind eased, carrying the scent of pine and wet earth. The world felt washed clean for a moment, empty but not cruel. Mary stood, clutching the small cross Jonas had carved from a branch. She placed it in the soil. "Thank you," she said. He nodded. "Ain't nothing. Just the right thing." But she could tell it wasn't nothing to him. Not at all. They walked back toward the shack in silence, the snow crunching beneath their boots. The sun didn't shine, just a dull gray light spreading across the land like an old bruise. Inside, the fire burned low again, its warmth flickering faintly against the shadows. Mary sat by it, staring into the coals. She whispered to herself, not sure if he heard. It was the first time anyone had stood beside me since death took everything. Jonas didn't answer. He just added another log to the fire and sat down across from her. Outside, the wind quieted. The storm was over, but in that small shack, something fragile and strange had begun. A spark neither of them yet understood. The world was gray when Mary woke. The storm had passed, leaving the land crusted in ice and silence. Smoke coiled from the shack's chimney, thin and uncertain. Inside, the air smelled of coffee with ash and something unfamiliar, warmth. Jonas Creed was at the stove, moving with the calm precision of a man used to silence. He glanced over when she stirred. "Coffee's hot," he said simply. Mary pushed herself upright, her limbs aching, her mind still wrapped in the dream she'd had, the laughter men echoing across an empty town. She blinked it away. "I didn't expect you'd still be here," she said, her voice rasped raw. He poured her a tin cup and handed it to her. "Ain't right to leave a woman alone in this cold, not after burying her child." She stared at the coffee, dark as tar. "You could have." "I could have," he agreed, then took a slow sip from his own cup. "Didn't." Outside, crows circled above the frozen creek, their cries sharp against the stillness. Mary felt their presence like a warning. "I can't stay here," she murmured. "Didn't plan on it," Jonas said. "Dead Horse Creek's 2 days west. There's a settlement there, half-decent folk, fair chance for work." Her brow creased. "Why take me there?" He shrugged, eyes fixed on the frost-covered window. "Ain't a place for the dead to walk. You're still breathing, far as I can tell." The words hung between them, heavy but kind. She wanted to argue, to tell him breathing wasn't living, but she didn't. By noon, they were on the trail. Jonas led a bay gelding, and Mary rode a small, wiry mare he'd caught from a nearby corral. The horse's hooves crunched through ice. The land stretched endless and colorless, the sky pressing low and metallic. Mary hadn't ridden in months. Each step jarred her bones, but she didn't complain. She was done complaining. Jonas rode ahead, scanning the horizon. He moved like a man who'd spent half his life expecting danger. When he turned, his eyes, gray as the sky, carried something she couldn't name. "You ever been that far west?" he asked. She shook her head. "My husband talked about it once. Said there was gold in those rivers. But he never came back from the mine." Jonas nodded, saying nothing more. By dusk, they made camp near a line of birch trees. He built a fire, and the smell of smoke mixed with pine. She watched him, how he worked quietly, efficiently. No wasted motion. He handed her a tin plate with beans and salt pork. She hesitated, then took it. "Thank you." He grunted, eyes on the fire. "You don't talk much," she said. "Talk's cheap. Listening ain't." She gave a tired laugh. "Then what do you hear when you listen?" He looked at her across the flames. A woman trying real hard not to fall apart. Her smile faded. "I already did." He nodded, not arguing. "Then maybe it's time to put the pieces where you want 'em." For a long time, neither spoke. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the low groan of something far off. Wolves, maybe. Mary wrapped the blanket tighter. She thought about his words long after the fire burned low. They rode west for 2 more days through rough country, frozen rivers, sharp ridges, and valleys where the air stank of iron. Mary grew stronger, though she said little. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was a strange kind of comfort. Jonas rode like a man who trusted no horizon. His eyes never stopped moving. That second night, they camped near a narrow ravine. The moon was a pale coin above them. Jonas sat sharpening his knife while Mary gathered wood. "You said you were looking for something," she said. "You ever find it?" He stopped sharpening, glanced up. "Not yet." "You running from something, then?" He chuckled once, without humor. "Ain't we all?" She studied him. There was something in the way he said it. Tired, worn, like he'd carried too much too long. "You sound like a man who's lost more than he's found." He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small, tarnished object. It caught the firelight. A sheriff's badge, bent and burned along the edge. Mary's breath caught. "You were he said simply. "What happened?" He turned the badge over in his palm, the metal glinting faintly. "Men I trusted turned bounty for blood money. Took bribes from bandits. I tried to clean it up. They framed me for a killing I didn't do. My wife tried to help me prove it." His jaw tightened. "They found her in a creek 3 towns over." Mary's stomach turned. "I'm sorry." He nodded once, as if he'd already worn out the words. "After that, I stopped wearing the badge. Started hunting the ones who still do." She looked at him, truly looked, at the lines etched deep into his face, the scar across his wrist, the way he flinched from kindness like it was a weapon. "You're chasing ghosts," she said quietly. "Maybe, but I ain't letting them laugh while they live." The fire popped, sending sparks into the night. Mary wrapped her shawl tighter. "You ever think about stopping?" "Every day," he said. "And every day I don't." There was nothing to say after that. Sometime after midnight, she dreamed of laughter again. This time, it came from the darkness, echoing through the ravine. When she woke, Jonas was already standing, rifle in hand. "Riders," he said. 3 of them, coming fast. The men rode in from the north, their horses kicking up frost and mud. Mary recognized one immediately, red-faced, thick-necked, the same man who'd spat at her outside the saloon. "Well, hell," he drawled, reining in his horse. "If it ain't the Price widow. Didn't figure you'd make it past the graveyard." Mary froze. Jonas stepped forward, calm as winter. "Keep moving," he said. The man smirked. "Ain't talking to you, friend. Just come to say hello to a lady who don't know when to stay buried." Behind him, the others laughed. Jonas's voice stayed low, steady. "You had your fun once. Leave her be." The red-faced man leaned in his saddle. "You're a new husband? Don't look much like the marrying kind." Jonas didn't move. "Last warning." The man grinned. "Or what?" Then came the sound of a rifle cocking. Jonas's hands didn't shake. His eyes didn't blink. "Or you don't get a second one." The air cracked. The first shot hit the red-faced man square in the chest. He jerked back, dead before he hit the ground. The second rider went for his pistol. Too slow. Jonas's revolver spoke again, fast as lightning. The man tumbled from his horse, blood splattering across the snow. The third turned tail, spurring his horse hard. Jonas didn't fire. He holstered his weapon and watched the rider vanish into the gray hills. Silence fell heavy. Only the horses breathed. Mary stood rooted to the spot, her hands trembling. Jonas turned to her. His face was unreadable. "You said they laughed," he murmured. "Not anymore." The words hit like a hammer. She swallowed hard, her pulse racing. "You killed them." "They were already dead," he said. "Just didn't know it yet." The snow began to fall again, soft and soundless. They moved the bodies to the edge of the canyon and covered them with stones. Jonas worked quietly, methodically. Mary watched, tore between horror and gratitude. When it was done, he wiped the blood from his hands and went back to the fire. Mary sat beside him, her face pale. "You've done this before." He didn't deny it. Sometimes the only way to silence the devil is to speak his language. She looked away. "And what does that make you?" He didn't answer. The fire burned low, crackling softly. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the smell of gunpowder and snow. Mary stared into the flames, her voice low. When my baby died, I thought I'd never feel anything again. Now I feel too much. Jonas looked at her. Feelings how you know you ain't gone yet. She shook her head. You don't know what it's like. I know what loss smells like, he said quietly. Same as gun smoke. It don't ever leave your clothes. For a moment, they just sat there. Two broken souls staring into a fire that could never burn their ghosts away. Outside, the surviving rider would carry news of what happened. Jonas knew it. He didn't say it aloud, but the tension in his jaw spoke for him. Mary could sense it too. They'll come for you, won't they? He met her eyes. They always do. A silence stretched brittle and taut. Then she spoke, softer. Then they'll come for me too. He didn't answer, but the look he gave her said enough. By morning, they packed up camp. The air smelled of frost and ash. Jonas led the horses, and Mary followed. Behind them, 3 graves marked the snow, the stones already half buried by the wind. As they rode on, the sky grew darker, the land harsher. The world seemed to close in, as though warning them there was no turning back. Mary watched Jonas's back as he rode ahead, his shoulders straight, his gaze fixed on the horizon. She wondered what he carried inside him, what it cost to live like that. For the first time, she realized she wasn't afraid of him. Not anymore. That night, they found shelter in a hollow cave beneath a ridge. Jonas built a small fire, and the glow danced across the stone walls. Mary sat beside it, pulling her knees close. You could have let them live, she said. He poked at the fire with a stick. Men like that don't live. They just keep killing until someone stops them. Is that what you do? Stop men. I try, he said. Sometimes I fail. She watched him, her voice barely above a whisper. And what happens when someone comes to stop you? He looked up, his eyes catching the firelight, gray steel beneath the flicker. Then I'll be ready. She held his gaze, saw the ghost there, and felt something shift, fear giving way to understanding. Outside, the wind rose again, carrying a lonely whistle through the rocks. Inside, the flames danced lower, the shadows stretching long. Jonas leaned back against the wall, his hat tipped low. Get some rest. Tomorrow we reach Dead Horse Creek. Mary nodded, though sleep didn't come easy. She lay awake listening to the fire crackle, her thoughts twisting between dread and something strange, hope, faint but alive. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Jonas's hand tightened on his revolver, though his eyes stayed closed. Mary turned toward him. The light caught the scar along his wrist again, like a story half told. She whispered to the dark, For the first time since my baby died, I'm not afraid of dying. He didn't move, but his voice came low and certain. Then you're starting to live. Outside, the snow fell silent. The fire burned down to embers, and the road to Dead Horse Creek waited, black and unforgiving beneath the dawn. The wind had quieted by dawn, but the land still looked bruised. The horizon lay in smudges of gray and red, a world scraped raw by last night's violence. Smoke from far-off homesteads curled into the sky, not from warmth, but from what had been burned. Martha held the reins tight as the mule cart rolled along the muddy trail. Her shawl was torn, soaked from the storm, but she didn't shiver anymore. Grief had burned the cold right out of her. The stranger, Eli, rode beside her on horseback, his shoulders hunched, eyes scanning every ridge and hollow. He hadn't said much since the fire at Black Hollow. They'd lost half their supplies in that chaos. And 3 men, Briggs' men, were dead because of it. But she knew it wasn't over. Men like Briggs didn't stop until the debt was paid in full. Eli pulled his horse to a halt. Tracks, he said, his voice low. She followed his gaze. Hoof prints. 5 or 6 horses, deep in the wet clay, heading south. They're going back to town, she murmured. He shook his head. No, they're hunting in a circle. Look here. He pointed to a splintered fence post, blackened and split. They burned your homestead already. Now they'll wait for you to come back to the ashes. Martha's throat tightened. Then that's where I'm going. Eli turned to her sharply. You go back there, you die there. I already died once, she said, when they took my boy. What's left now is a woman who's not afraid to look the devil in the eye. For a long moment, The only sound was the creak of leather and the low wind moving through the grass. Then Eli swung off his horse and walked beside her cart. "Then I'll ride with you," he said quietly, "but we do it smart." The trail wound toward the charred remains of her home. The smell hit her before the sight did. Burned timber, singed fabric, something darker beneath it. The small cabin she'd built with her husband was nothing but a black skeleton. The rocking chair still stood by the porch. The one leg had melted into the dirt. Martha stepped down slowly. Every part of her trembled, but her face stayed still. She walked to the ashes and knelt, running her fingers through the soot. A small tin rattle, half melted, caught the morning light. She clutched it to her chest. "I made him this when he was 1, she whispered. Used to shake it when he cried. Eli stood a few paces behind her, hat in hand. He didn't speak. He just looked at her, at the ruin, at what this place had meant. Suddenly, a sound cracked the silence, the distant echo of a rifle. Eli lunged forward, grabbing her arm, pulling her down. Down! The shot splintered the air again, striking the wheel of the cart. A bullet whined off the stone wall beside them. "They're here," Eli growled. "Briggs sent the rest." Martha's eyes hardened. She reached under the wagon seat and pulled out the old rifle she'd kept hidden, her husband's. "Then let's welcome him home." Eli gave her a look, one of reluctant respect. "You shoot straight?" "I shoot angry," she said. The attack came fast. 3 riders appeared from the west ridge, 2 more from the slope behind the creek bed. Eli fired first, his shot taking a man clean off his saddle. The others scattered, circling like wolves. Smoke rose again, curling from their gunfire. Martha crouched behind the wreckage, breathing hard. She aimed, squeezed, missed. She adjusted, fired again. The second shot dropped another horse. The rider tumbled, screaming, into the mud. Eli reloaded with practice calm. "Briggs ain't among 'em," he muttered. "He'll wait till the noise dies down." As if summoned by the words, a voice carried from beyond the ridge. "You should have stayed buried, widow." Martha froze. She knew that voice. Briggs. Eli stood, firing twice toward the ridge. "You got no business here, Briggs. The law." Briggs laughed, a deep mocking sound. "Law? You don't even know who you're riding with, stranger. Ask her who killed her own man. Ask her who owes me more than a debt." Martha's grip on the rifle faltered for a split second. Eli turned toward her, confusion in his eyes. But she didn't answer. Not yet. She fired toward the ridge, rage burning through her veins. "You lie," she shouted. "You killed him, not me." Briggs' voice echoed again. "Tell him, Martha. Tell him about the night you begged me for mercy." The next bullet came too close, grazing Eli's shoulder. He stumbled back with a hiss of pain, clutching the wound. Martha fired again, driving the riders off. Silence followed, broken only by Eli's strained breathing. When it was finally over, she helped him sit against the cart. Blood soaked through his sleeve, but the wound wasn't deep. He looked up at her, pale. "You gonna tell me?" She sat beside him, her voice barely above the wind. "My husband owed Briggs money. Bad land, bad luck. When we couldn't pay, Briggs came drunk one night. Said he'd take the boy instead, as payment. I begged him not to. My husband fought him. Briggs shot him dead. And when I tried to stop him, he said he'd come for me next." Eli's jaw clenched. "And the boy?" She shook her head, tears cutting through the ash on her face. "Fever took him a week later. I buried him myself." Eli reached over, gripping her hand. "Then this ends tonight." She looked at him, and in that moment, something passed between them. Not romance, not yet. Something fiercer. The shared understanding of people who'd lost everything and still stood. "Tonight," she said. They waited until nightfall. The ridge behind the burned homestead looked out over the valley, a long sweep of dark trees, and low fog rolling like breath from the earth. Eli had built a small fire behind a fallen log, careful to shield the light. Martha cleaned his wound as best she could, wrapping it with a torn strip from her skirt. He didn't flinch, just watched her in the firelight, Her face drawn but strong, eyes sharp with purpose. "Briggs will come back," Eli said finally. "He always finishes his work." "Then let him." He smiled faintly. "You always as stubborn?" "Only when I got nothing left to lose." Hours passed. Coyotes howled in the distance, a lonely, mournful sound. Then faint hoofbeats. Eli's hand moved to his revolver. "3 horses," he whispered. "Maybe 4. They doused the fire and crouched low. The night grew heavier, the fog thick as wool. Shapes moved below, Briggs and 2 men. Their torches burned dull in the mist. "Spread out," Briggs barked. "Find the bodies. I want her head." Eli signaled Martha, a nod toward the slope. She understood. They separated silently, moving like ghosts among the trees. Eli waited until one man passed close, then struck, quick and hard. The fight was silent, brutal. A single muffled gasp, then the man went down. Martha crouched behind a tree, rifle steady. Her pulse hammered in her ears. Briggs moved closer, torchlight flickering across his scarred face. "Martha," he called softly, mockingly, "you can't hide forever." She rose from the shadow, rifle aimed. "Not hiding," she said. Briggs turned, surprise flickering before cruelty returned. "You again," always pointing a gun, never knowing how to use it. "I learned." She fired. The bullet caught him high in the shoulder, spinning him to the ground. He roared in pain, firing wildly as he fell. Sparks lit the fog. Eli rushed from the darkness, gun drawn. The last man swung around, shooting. The shot tore through Eli's side. He fell but stayed conscious. Teeth gritted against the pain. He fired once, straight through the man's chest. The echo rolled across the valley. Briggs crawled through the mud, bleeding, cursing. Martha walked toward him, rifle lowered but steady. "You burned my home," she said. "Laughed when my baby died." "Why?" Briggs spat blood. "Because that's what this land is, woman. It laughs at the weak." She leveled the rifle. Then maybe it's time the weak started laughing back. The gunshot was clean. The echo took its time fading. Eli watched her in silence as she lowered the rifle, smoke curling from a barrel. Her face was pale in the moonlight, but her eyes burned steady. He staggered up, wincing, and put a hand on her shoulder. "It's done." She nodded slowly. "No, it's just begun." They buried Briggs and his men near the ridge at dawn. No markers, no prayers. The sky was gray, soft rain falling, quiet and forgiving. Eli stood beside her, hat low, coat dark with blood and mud. "What do you do now?" he asked. She looked out at the land, the valley below, the faint smoke from the ruined cabin. "Start again. Maybe build near the river this time. Soil's kinder there." He smiled faintly. "You'll need help." She looked at him, studying the man who'd come from nowhere, fought beside her, and nearly died for someone he barely knew. "Then stay," she said simply. He nodded once. "I reckon I will." They turned together toward the horizon, not golden, not bright, just gray and alive, the kind of light that meant something had ended and something else had the chance to begin. The narrator's voice might have said it best, if there had been one to speak. The frontier didn't give peace. It gave chances to the broken, the hunted, the ones who refused to die quiet. And sometimes that was enough.